So the recording.
Sorry?
No, I was just checking for the recording. So hi, everybody who's joining for the recording and for everybody else who's here. And I guess, yeah, you were jumping off. So excellent. So that also means let me put you on a different view so I can see you. It's nicer. Welcome. Nice to meet you. I think we might have a few more people that might jump in later. We'll do a tiny little who are you introduction exercise in a minute. Also, oh, I have a requesting group anyway. Okay. So there's all these AIs joining these days. It's amazing. So yeah, we're a small group, so we can really make this interactive. We'll have a few moments where I'll ask question, but also don't hesitate to put something in the chat, to put your hand up. This is the advantage of being a small group, so we can be a bit informal. So with that, let me see if I can get the technique work and put my. So I start sharing. Maybe please let me know if you can see or when you can see. Can you see something? I put that on screen so it's bigger in a second. Up, here we go. Can you all see the slides? All good? Thumbs up? Perfect. Cool. So indeed, the discussion today is about transferable skills, or what I call it, finding your superpower. Ina mentioned to me that I think the position of this training changed a little bit in the curriculum. So you're really in the career strategy part of the program, right? So if there are bigger strategic questions linked to that, also feel free to shoot them in. What we'll be looking at are transferable skills. So what I invite you to do, give it a quick thought and then type it into the chat, but don't send it yet. And when I send, we'll all send at the same time, just to see, if you have the same ideas, kind of, it's like a little exercise to avoid that people just like what others sent. So I give you like a minute to give it a thought, and there's no wrong or right answer. So don't ask ChatGPT. It's just out of your head. What would you think? What would you expect when we say we talk about transferable skills? Are you good to go? Yeah, no, something. Okay, yeah, Enya is good to go. Great, thanks for the feedback. Anyway, let's just, whatever you have, let's just go. See what comes up. Okay, now I have to make the chat bigger. Oops, no, here we go. Okay, let me see. Which skills do I have that can be used in other my domain? Yes, soft skills are effective here now. Soft skills is certainly part of it. Skills that one can different aspects can be applied in other positions, industries. Exactly. So yeah, that's also more or less how I would define it. Soft skills are certainly part of it. I would say they're different. I mean, it can be hard skills or soft skills. I don't think transferable skills are necessarily limited to one or the other. And actually, the whole art is not only the superpowers, it's what I call the magical mix. It's the unique combination of your set of skills, and we'll get there. So up, I think, yeah, I have an official definition, one slide after this. So if you can scan this, or I'm also going to drop up the link into the chat box. That's just a super tiny Menti survey to get a sense a little bit, who you are. So you'll see there are a few questions, and I think I should be seeing the results come in as soon as you click them. And let me know if the link doesn't work. Yes, so we have just get a sense of which sector you're coming from. We have one person coming from the private sector. Let's see what else. What else you've been working? Oh, IO and GO. Oh, nice. Up to private sector. Can you see? You can see the slide, right? Other. Oh, what is other? Who's other? Feel free to drop it in the chat or just mention. So maybe always curious because sometimes I realize I haven't covered all categories. Okay, a few private sector. Okay, then let's move to the next one, which is, so what's your professional background? You know, so kind of project manager or finance or marketing, or I don't know, depending on how you define it, to just get a sense of. Oh, and it's nice, and I only see that now that you have your Enneagram type in there. That's cool. So you've already done those sessions. Okay, finance, tech, data. Okay. Ooh. Ooh, more finance. It's in communication. Ooh, nice. Okay, that's great. I mean, there's by default no good or bad profession, but those are typically professions where I found that the skills are often easier transferable across sectors. You know, there are some roles in some, you know, I worked part of my career. I don't know how much background do you have of my career? I'll have a slide later where I talk about my CV a bit, but basically I spent the first, say, well, almost decade of my career in the private sector and the second decade in the humanitarian sector. Moved from marketing into fundraising and then into more partnership coordination. And so what I've seen over the years that, you know, if you do something super specific, whether it's in the private sector or in the humanitarian sector, you know, I work for the Red Cross, so many of my colleagues, they work on really specific field programs. That makes it a bit harder to transfer those skills. It's not impossible, but it's harder. But skills like, you know, banking, finance, communication, those skills, they're really important no matter which sector you're in. So here's the last one. What do you find most challenging in your job hunt? Assuming you're hunting jobs, if you, because also I think there's also entrepreneurship work. So if you're, you know, depending on where you're heading, if you're looking for a job or if you want to start your business, oh yeah, work visa, it's a tough one. Is that the Ukrainian one, or is that any? Because I know that I think for Ukrainian citizens, there's still the possibility to have a specific visa, right? But then I guess otherwise it might be more challenging.
Yeah, this is my answer. Basically, yeah, I have Ukrainian passport, but I'm not in Switzerland based, basically.
I
So
see,
I'm
not in
looking,
UK.
I'm looking
Okay.
specifically for B visa and not any other type of visa.
So in the UK, it's harder with the visa. It's different, the system, right?
My main first destination and goal is Switzerland. So UK is still like backup, but still like in the UK, take into account like everything that's happening right now in this country, it's still like tough to get work visa.
Oh wow, fingers crossed. Okay, what else? No more challenges. That's good. Something. I mean, you know, I don't know, is it with your mindset? Is it with also, you know, I mean, I actually recently lost my job at the Red Cross. And you know, so I'm actually also looking for a job. I'm also doing all this work at the side. And the market is Switzerland is tough these days. There's not much work out there. So, you know, so yeah, Larissa, yes.
Thank you, Maggie. I think one of my challenge is its age. Age, and it's a common problem for all over the world. Yeah, at the certain age, we are disappearing for the recruiters. Yeah, so that's why, yeah, I find it's try to fight with this. I try to fight, but it's impossible. That's why we need to be do something, think of something else, something,
Yeah.
yeah, to be different.
Yeah. No, I can really relate to that because I guess, yeah, once you're mid late 40s, early 50s, I mean, yeah, it becomes tougher and tougher because always there are little jobs out there and to be experienced. Yeah. So I can totally feel that challenge. So find a sufficient level of job in English speaking company. Yeah. So that's for Switzerland or I guess, or like for,
That's Switzerland. Yeah.
yeah, navigating long hiring process and like, yes, yeah, that's really frustrating. Clarify my strategic domain to apply almost maximum efficiency. Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging days. Well, let's see. I mean, you joined this program, which is a great program. So I'm certain that it'll get a lot of inspiration out of it and hopefully also some really practical things you can apply and use. So let's get, yeah, sorry, somebody. So let's get a bit more into this concept of transferable skills. So I pulled you out a definition. I looked it up. It was one of those, I think it was either one of these English, like Oxford or whatever. So one of those definitions. So it's transferable skills are this indeed oh Jesus, transferable skills are indeed defined as skills used in one job or career that can be transferred to another. And that could be both technical skills, which would be more strategy, project management, finance, marketing, these kind of really the communication, sort of the functional expertise, and the soft skills, which could be more collaboration, critical thinking, empathy. And I always encourage people to look at your whole life, not just at what you've done professionally. If you're a old woman, if you have a family, you're probably a pretty good project management skills just by running your family or getting the kids to school, or, really think beyond what you did in your day job. You might have already developed some amazing skills with everything else you're doing in your life. And you just never, maybe you don't have a official project management certification, but you certainly can do certain things already. And then also consider the potential career moves you might be considering, so you might, I mean, obviously the easiest one is if you have the same industry and the same role, like let's say you do project management and you like to move from one, or you're looking for a job in the same sector, in the same type of job, just in a different company. Let's say you move from one private company to another one in finance. So it's not easy, but it's simpler than the other moves. Then you might stay in the same job, but move sectors. So that could be, the example I gave was, oh, we lost somebody. So the example I got is IT expertise, but there could be many. So for that type of expertise, it doesn't really matter which sector you're in. So there are many skills that you could, either communication is another one that you could be doing in the private sector, you could be doing in academia, you could be doing in an NGO world. And then for instance, when you go from a certain job into the same industry, but a different job. So for instance, you might be, here I have a humanitarian sector example, you might be in public relations and you want to go into resource mobilization, or in the private sector, I don't know, you might have been in finance and you want to go into market research. So all these moves, they're possible, but in terms of skills, sometimes you have to build really new skills, and you can leverage being in the same company, so you already have your network, or the skills are close enough that you can make the transfer. So for instance, if you go from public relations into resource mobilization, it has a lot to do with good communication skills, and you just use them for different purposes. And then you can also move from like across sectors. So for instance, you have, I mean, so if you move to a different sector and a different role, that's of course the hardest move. So that's actually what I did years ago, but I didn't do it in one step. I moved from marketing in the private sector to fundraising in the humanitarian sector. So that was the closest enough step. and only later into operational partnership coordination, which is where I wanted to go from the beginning, but it was just impossible to make the step immediately. So when you make this big jump into a different role in a different sector, it's not impossible, but often it can take more than one step to get there. And you might have to sacrifice in the first step to take on a role you're maybe a little bit less passionate about, but it will take you on the right path towards your bigger ambitions. So maybe I just pause there quickly if there's any questions or comment on that specifically, and then we get more into the superpower skills themselves. No question coming. Good. And if they come up, just feel free to jump in. So your superpowers, and I'm a big fan of minions. So it's really about finding your set of skills that makes you different. Before we look at your specific skills, let's also look at the bigger picture where the world is heading. This list is a little bit outdated. It's from the World Economic's Future of Job report from 2023. I did check the most recent reports. The problem with the more recent report is they doesn't have this nice table. They still talk about more or less the similar things, but they haven't presented it so nicely. And they didn't change massively. So the top skills they see on the rise for the next 5 to 10 years. It's creative thinking, analytical thinking, technology literacy. I think that even has become much more dominant now with AI and all of these tools where we really have to stay up to date. Curiosity, lifelong learning, resilience, system thinking. So all of those are skills that are really important. And you'll see they're actually quite a nice mix of hard skills, soft skills, management skills, technology skills. So it's not just about being really good in one area, but having a good mix of the different type of skills, which also connects to the second graph I've put in there. That's the 21st century skills. They're often quoted as the 4 C's or 5 C's, which are the learning skills, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And then there are a few others. But those 4 C's, they're much more about how you work than the specific knowledge you gained. But those skills help you to then also adapt and go to other places, as long as you're really thinking critically, you're creative. So these are really key skills. By the way, any parents out there, these are also things that I think we need to teach our kids. I mean, I have only one, he's really tiny, he's only 8. But these, I'm already thinking now, how can I teach him these skills rather than just making him follow the school curriculum? And also another really important part, and that applies to anything, whether it's networking, whether it's transferable skills, whether it's what job you apply for. You have to get first clear of where you want to go. Unless you take the time to kind of soul search a little bit, to get clear, to analyze, and I'll be sharing some tools that can help you with that. And unless you have clarity where you want to go in the mid to long term, it's really hard to get there, right? So, you know, of course, probably your first priority is to have a job, have the work visa, you know, to be financially secured. At the same time, I'm a huge believer in if you don't have bigger dreams or bigger objectives, you cannot get there. So even if you cannot get there tomorrow, make sure you have an idea what ideal would look like, and then you can start charting a few steps towards it. So first, get clear what your interests are, your motivation, your values, your mid to long-term goals. And then you can shape this into your vision, into your dream model. And actually, you can play with ChatGPT with that. It's actually pretty cool. I've done that last year. I basically blah, blah, told him. You can also have the mode where you can actually talk to ChatGPT. You just tell them all the things that would be ideal for you. And then I ask it to write it down in a poetic style for a 1 year and a 5 year vision, just to have it captured what I'm aiming for. And I look back at it and it's just, you know, I find it super inspiring. It's just sometimes a boost of positive energy when you need it. And then when you're clear on those, then you can see which skills you want to boost. That might be skills you already have. You might also find out that certain skills you don't have yet, or you don't have sufficiently, and then you can be really intentional about building those. So when I did my career move from the private into humanitarian sector over 15 years ago now, I developed a few tools, and that's one of them. And I wanted to walk you through that. So I called it the forward CV or the target CV. So basically what I did back in 2013, I took a blank piece of paper like this one, and I actually still have the actual piece of paper. It's somewhere in my cupboard. And I started writing down how I want my CV to look like in 2030. And I was basically at that point, I was dreaming about a lot of this. So at that point, I had worked for about a decade in the private sector, and I wanted to move into the humanitarian sector. So in terms of skills and expertise, I wrote down, I want to be recognized as a servant leader and a coordinator, a trainer, facilitator, and life coach, which at that time I hadn't barely done at all either. To be good at strategy and business development, a good storyteller, work on change management. And that at the time I had barely any change management experience. And to work with people. If you know, there's one of those tools, Strength Finder. It's one of those books that give you your personality types. I'm a maximizer, which is really about people empowerment. And in terms of work experience, remember at that time I had about a decade work experience in the private sector. I wanted to have 15 years in the UN in development and humanitarian work, or a social entrepreneur. About 25 years in communication or brand management, that type of thing. 15 years as photographer or filmmaker. I have not advanced at all on that point. Be a serial social or not social entrepreneur and a mompreneur. At that point, I was single. And create a consultancy that I wanted to call CCC Consulting, which stands for Coach, Consult, and Connect, which I might be creating now. And in terms of education, personal development, I wanted to be an IFC certified coach, an awarded photographer, 20 years educational experience as a parent. Again, I was single, have an MBA and be an experiential trainer. So I'm sharing you all of this because, I mean, at that point, this was me smoking dope. You know, it was me really going like, this is how ideal would look like in, what was it, 15 years from that moment. Because that was in 2013 when I wrote that. And now I would say 90% of this has come true. And I'm not claiming that, you know, I found my partner, had my kid because of this piece of paper, but I think it does help you to prioritize, to know where you want to go, what's important to you, what's not important to you. Because you notice I haven't written, I want to be at sea level, or I haven't written, I don't know, I want to be filthy rich, or, you know, I mean, of course, nobody would turn down some money, but that was not the biggest priority for me. And in case you're wondering what my transferable skills are, I worked that with ChatGPT and revised it. So I was like, based on all that and my CV and God knows what are my transferable skills? So what I came up with in collaboration with my assistant ChatGPT was leadership and people development, strategic thinking and innovation, building bridges and convening, which I think is actually one of my superpowers, communication and cross-cultural experience. Now, these are quite generic. And that's where the magic mix comes in. And that's actually from a book. I'll have some book recommendations later that I recently read, and it might come up in one of the other slides. It's written by the founders of LinkedIn, and it's called The Startup of You. And a lot of it is nothing, no rocket science. But they say a few really clever things about networking. And the other bit that I quite like what they say in the book is that, you know, you don't have to be the best in one specific thing. You know, you don't have to be the best finance person in the world. You don't have to be the best project manager. You have to have a few skills where you're pretty good at that are really feel authentic to you, that you really feel like that's my thing. I'm good at doing and I like doing, which is not necessarily the same thing. And your magic mix is your combination of those. And sometimes that's combining random things. So you might be good in finance and you love dogs. And then you figure out actually a fantastic opportunity is at the crossroad of those two. I mean, that's maybe a bad example because I would struggle to come up with that specific opportunity. But you see the idea, you know, it's really look at your whole life on all your interests and skill sets and look at the one where maybe some things come together. And this is another tool I developed at the time, which I call the mapping of opportunities and skills. This also, you can take a piece of paper and just scribbling down things. So I put down a time horizon, short, mid, and long term, and then things you can do now and you want to do, which sometimes are more in the longer term. And then at that time, I also did that back in 2013. I mapped all my ideas on this thing. I mean, the filmmaker was in the want to do long term, and I'm still not there. But then short term at that point was like I could go into fundraising consulting or, you know, so I put all my ideas and opportunities out there, and I even labeled them with dollar signs to indicate which one could pay me some income at what point. And then I looked at those and I looked for patterns and I looked for skills that I might be lacking. And at that time, I realized that change management was something I was very interested in and I had zero experience with. And since then, I was through, I think, 6 restructurings and transformations. It's been a huge pain, but I did build my change management skills. So be cautious what you're asking for. And then depending on, you know, these I would call them, I'm a very intuitive person. So these are maybe a bit more intuitive tools. So if you're more of a structured person, here are 2 other tools that you can use just to, you know, to structure your thoughts, to get clear on what your assets already are, maybe where you want to go. The first one is a tool that's coming from an entrepreneurship tool that's called the business canvas model. And there's an adapted version that's called the personal business model canvas or the business model U. And it basically invites you to use this structure and think through all the different elements of your life, you know, so what are your key activities? So what do you do? What's your expertise? What's your line of work? How do you help people, or what do you contribute? How do you interact? Who do you help? And just map this all out. Again, because that might point you to, you might even realize, actually, I'm fantastic in whatever it might be. Even so, you're in finance, you might be actually a fantastic communicator. So maybe that's something you can push a bit more. The other model is coming from like a Japanese model that's used a lot in coaching. Has any of you heard about Ikigai already? Hands up. Yes, 1? No? Cool. 2. Excellent. So Ikigai is a model that, I mean, Ikigai literally means a reason for being. And it's a Japanese model that's used a lot in coaching and invites you, like the Ikigai by definition is the magic sweet spot between what you love doing, what you're good at doing, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And that's amazing if you can find this, because often we have to compromise and we cannot have it all at the same time. But nevertheless, it's a good exercise to just brainstorm again those different areas and see if you can find at least an area where several of those overlap. And just to give you an example of why loving to do something and being good at doing something is not necessarily the same thing. So I am originally German, and I don't know if it's my upbringing or if it's just, I don't know, education or me, or I don't know. So I'm extremely organized, very stereotypically. I'm good at organizing, I'm good at coordinating things. And I've been doing that a lot in my last few jobs. And then I did a personality assessment. It's a bit like Enneagram, but different, but they're all really enlightening. And it's an assessment where they point you to your motivation. So what gives you energy? And one of the areas where I came out on very low was structuring. And structuring included all of this, organizing, coordinating, and all of this. So I discussed that with my coach. And I realized that, yes, I was extremely good at that. I am extremely good at it, but I really hate it. It really gives me very low energy. I don't like doing it. So, I mean, if I have to do it, I can still do it. But just becoming aware of that might also help you to realize maybe you're really good at something that you're not enjoying. And then that's also now a opportunity for you to say, if you're anyway looking for a new job, maybe you can tweak it one way or another, where you can do more of the things you're actually passionate about and a bit less about the things that you're good at, but you don't really like. So let me pause here and just see if there are any clarification questions or any comments before I get you to work a little bit. Okay, so I'll give you, let's say, 10 minutes to give it a first good thought and start with or maybe do both. I mean, start listing, and it's not limited to 5, start listing some of your skills and experiences that you're most proud of, or that you really like doing, or that you feel like are really your assets, and maybe a few others that you're good at. And just first have a really long list. And maybe let's get there. And then in the second step, and I think in 10 minutes you can do both, then out of those, pick 3 skills or experiences you would like to further develop. So yeah, Anna.
I heard about Ikigai and I started reading a book, but I did not see so far if there is a test or like practical guide how to find out this sweet spot, as you say.
I haven't come across a practical test. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you Google that, some coach has probably developed some tool, but I haven't come across a scientifically, like something that has a methodology behind it. I think it's also part of the nature. I also read a few books on Ikigai. I think it's part of the nature that it's very reflective, so I wouldn't know how you can put that into a test. But yeah, I'm not aware of any, if any of you
Methodology.
find
Yeah.
some.
Okay.
But it
Thank
can
you.
be anyway it's maybe a bit more, it's less scientific, but I think for reflection it can be still useful.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other question? No. So I go off camera until like 1:15. So give it a go. And then afterwards, I mean, this is for you. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to list your, whatever comes out. This is for you and you alone. But what would be interesting when we come back together, if you share, I mean, let's see what you come up with. It's more like insights you might have, like maybe you might have surprises, or, you go, and then in 10 minutes, we'll see if there's any big insights that came out of this. So I'll go off camera. Feel free to do the same or keep it on as you wish, and then we'll reconnect in 10 minutes. So let me know if you need a bit more time or come slowly back. Wait, let's give it another minute or so for everybody else to be back. Well, let's slowly get started, and then I'm sure Jimena and Tatiana will also come back on camera once they're finished their reflections. So how did it go? Not so much, I mean, feel free to share whatever, you know, but more also in terms of process. Did you come up with, you know, was it really reassuring what you already knew? Did something new come up? Any insights coming from that exercise? Irina? Yeah? You want to come in?
If I can make just a little comment, I have written down like 9 skills that I have mostly right now. And I chose 3 of them, which I would like to develop. And for me, it's not, obviously, it's not the best I have. So I would like to develop like the weakest for me that I have. So can I logically assume that that it is good to me right now to concentrate on the one that I have written down to develop and search activities that will help me to develop skills that I have mentioned? So it's like a question.
So it's a really good question, because there are a few theories on that. You know, so there is a whole field of work that's around positive psychology, and positive psychology encourages to focus on the bigger strength. So I'm not saying it's wrong or right. You know, it's just being intentional and conscious about it. So there's a piece of work that suggests when you focus on what you're already good at and make it really good, that probably it's more fun, but also you'll get to an even stronger point. If you're weak at something, I guess probably the criteria I would apply if I was you would also think, how much do you enjoy those skills even when you're a bit weaker today, and how much do they contribute to where you want to go? You know, so I don't know, are you comfortable sharing what you wrote down, or else I can make up an example to illustrate?
I can share like my top skills right now. Yes, exactly. It's communication. It's the best one I have right now. And explaining difficult things in easy ways. It's like top 2. But others that I would like to develop, it's multitasking. I have it. I'm mommy of 2 children, so I have it, but it's not the best way, and it can be better. And of course, like people management. So, for example, I have these 2 and 2, the best one, the middle one, and the middle one I would like to develop.
Okay, so I think that's actually great. So so first of all, I really love how you phrased it to say difficult things in simple words. I think that's actually a superpower. And I don't know, any of you follows Mel Robbins, you know, the American podcaster. So she's an American podcaster. She's actually by profession, she's, I think, a lawyer. And her super skill is to translate complicated things in easy terms. And I think that's why she has millions of followers, because, you know, she talks to scientists and then she translated in a language that you and I would understand it. So I think that, just to say, I think that's actually a super skill you should absolutely focus on. On people management, I guess that's probably also to do with how much exposure you had, right? Or do you feel like you're not good at it, or you just haven't done it much, so you just need more practice?
I think I can do it better. I had practiced like to be deputy of chief of department, so it was quite good. And I know that I can be better.
Okay, so I think that's a great one to develop. On multitasking, I want to challenge you, because multitasking, I've gotten really into mindfulness over the last year or so, and mindfulness also for, to have more of a flow, to be more focused. And there's a really good book. The creator of the concept of flow has a Czech name that I cannot pronounce. He's called Michael something really complicated with many consonants, but I can find you the title. And he developed this whole concept of flow, this moment when you're really and the whole point of flow is that you don't multitask. So maybe depending on what skill you want to develop, because maybe it's more of sequencing the tasks. You know what I mean? It's a difference, is to do whatever you do 100% zoomed in, super efficient, and then do the next thing. Because multitasking, usually it's just making you distracts you from doing anything properly. But whatever you choose as a skill, that's your choice. But, as we're a small group, I just use that opportunity to.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else has something to share, either in terms of your skills, or maybe it also resonates with what Irina shared? Yes, Julia, please come in.
Hello. So my abilities are, I just heard what Irina said. Something is really, really close to Irina's thoughts. So I can find an approach about maybe in 80% to every person, yeah, because of communication, sense of humor, and so on. So I'm really good in explanation, and I can quickly get into the point of some question, yeah. And I have ability to upgrade some reports, some task, and I'm good in finding some, I don't know, hidden spots or weak sides in some tasks or reports. And I can do both last minute tasks and well-organized tasks, which needs some time and preparation. So, but I think it's 3, yeah. So, yeah.
So is that also the ones you'd like to develop even further?
Maybe, because I'm good in it, but maybe not so good. For example, to find approach to anybody, yeah. Maybe I need to be better in communication. So.
And and I want to point to something. I really like how both of you phrased some of your skills, because it can be tempting to just go, I'm good in finance, I'm good in, but what I really like is how you phrased it a bit more openly. So you said also in explanations, communication, and a sense of humor. And I think that's actually, again, sense of humor, that's one of those things that are underrated. Business life is tough enough. And if you have the skill to lighten it up sometimes in an appropriate manner, sometimes I went overboard with my humor in situations where people were like, yeah, that wasn't funny. But, I think generally speaking, I think it's an amazing skill to have, because who said business have to be always serious? It's some of these things I don't know about your culture background, but in Germany, business is a bit serious business, right? You have this whole idea, you work, that's serious stuff, and then you go out and drink a beer after, and that's the funny stuff. But who said we cannot bring them together? So I think that's actually something really important to bring to teams. And the other bit I really liked how you formulated it was to find the hidden spots in reports. I think that's actually also a really good skill. So, and I find it super interesting how you both framed it in a way that it's not standard. So I think that gets closer to your unique skills. So I think that's really great.
Thank you.
Anybody else to share, either in terms of the process, maybe surprises? Yes, Jimena, is that correct?
Yeah, it's Jimena or Jimena. That's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm as a base, I'm a journalist. So it's very interesting because I felt very identified because I started to work more into the communications and marketing. I worked 6 years in big media, and then I started to work more in communications and marketing, and I realized many of my skills like social media, content creation, video production, search engine optimization were applied to the communications and marketing departments. So I would say, yeah, my skills and experience, they include like a search engine optimization, digital marketing, strategic communication and storytelling, AI-driven content creation, and the skills, experiences to further develop. I wrote down business development and client acquisition, data analytics and marketing automation, and leadership at a bigger scale. I mean, I led teams, but more like juniors or interns, and yeah. So to wrap up, more or less that.
So that was like 4 priorities, right? But what I hear you is in terms of development has a lot to do with data, right? I mean, a few there was leadership, then there were a few that were quite related to data and business development. Is that fair?
Yeah, and client acquisition, I would say, like clients. As I
That
was
would be
working.
business development, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Totally.
Yeah, well, that's great. So then, but then be interesting to see. So if you want to work on business, improve business acquisition, what is actually the skill that is behind that? You know, because business acquisition is kind of a task, right? So the skill behind it is maybe, I don't know, influencing, or it's, or you already said you're really good in communication. So I guess your communication skills will help you. Or, you know, so which part of the business acquisition you feel like you need to develop most?
I would say, for example, as I worked in media, it's in media there's like not that much focus on, for example, on return on investment, or it's more like building the content as the product you're building. So then when I started to have more working with other businesses, I realized like marketing and content creation and digital marketing, it has a lot to do with return on investment, and like get it into how it involves. It's not the content for the content and the importance as the content that's very typical in media newsletters, but as a way to like make the business work. So probably from that, and like definitely working like with different clients. That's something I'm currently working on. Because again, when you're in a big multimedia, like media international, it's like you're focused on the content because people want to read content, like what's going on in the world and everything.
I quite like that. That might lead you to your magic mix, because if you combine your journalism experience and your communication skills with something more data focused, you know, that links more with the ROI, and that probably will then also help you in the customer acquisition, because you can then back up your pitch or your arguments with more data. You know, I think it can really nicely come all together.
Yeah, that's true. True. Thanks a lot for the feedback. I'm gonna put my eyes on the data, definitely.
Excellent. And you know, I think ChatGPT, that's one, or ChatGPT, any of those tools, I think with all this AI, that's the bit where they can help us more in the future. But then to make sense of what they give us, you know, there's still the human part where you have to then also be really critical about, you know, what stuff they're actually giving you in terms of data and analysis.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Thanks.
Great. So anybody else would like to share? No? Okay, we have a few more slides, and then I pause again for questions, or if anything else come up, you can also come in later if something comes up. There's not much to go, but that's all good. So here, a few actionable steps, or kind of really reminders how to then also market your skills. So one bit, once you're clear on your top skills, I mean, that really closely links to your personal branding and how you'd like to position yourself. You know, so if you can say, I don't know, Jimena, if you can say, I'm the journalist communication person that can tell you exactly what ROI your tool will have, you know, that's kind of starting, you start creating your story, right? So with those key skills, and knowing your value and your style, then you can make sure that comes through everywhere in your CV or in your cover letter, that you can really pitch your unique magic, like your unique mix. And you can even, even when you change sectors or work scopes, there's always something that connects the bits. So I worked in marketing, I worked in partnerships, I worked in fundraising, but probably one of the common denominators is actually people, so it doesn't even need to be the substance itself. And then also that can help you with the job hunting, because, sometimes it can be so overwhelming to even look at the job boards. I mean, these days it's so frustrating. There's nothing out there, or not much. At least that's how I feel. But then it can help you to find maybe target roles you'd like to do, to also see, okay, maybe in the, I either apply for the same type of role across sectors, or I really focus on a specific sector and explore different roles. So just being clear on those key skills you want to focus on can then help you to target a bit more which jobs you would like to go after. Up. And then also you can work on your elevator pitch, like the famous 30 minutes pitch. There are a few ways you can do that. I mean, there's a few tools you can play around with ChatGPT to help them to challenge you how to develop that pitch. I think I created a few prompts to do that, to really have it clear. Like if you have this 30 seconds opportunity to talk somebody at a networking event, that you can at least have the clear initial statement, what you're interested in, or what you like to find in your next job, or something you're really passionate about. This 30-second pitch can really be useful. And then speak their language. So this is something that is more relevant when you want to go into a new sector. When I did my transfer back in 2013, I also did an MBA program at the time. And one of our career counselors, they literally translated my CV from private sector jargon to development jargon. I mean, the CV was English, but just the, certain terms are totally clear in one sector and the other sector doesn't get it at all. At one point, I was helping a friend of mine who's kick-ass professional. She was in the private sector, pretty high up in where we worked together. Then she was the CMO in a Italy-based organization. She applied for a position at UNICEF, and sadly, she sent the application before I could have a look at it. I think people could not understand what she was saying. And she's fantastic, hugely accomplished. And she used so much marketing jargon. If you sit there and you live with your UN jargon, I mean, she also didn't get forward with that application. And I'm almost convinced a big reason why it didn't go ahead was because people literally couldn't understand how great she was, because they didn't understand what she was saying. So that's a really important point if you want to move sectors. And then there is one simple tool for interview preparations called STAR. Has anyone heard of you about that tool already? I see some people nodding. Great. So it's to basically frame, when you talk about an example, explaining the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And the result is particularly important. We tend to talk a lot about all the great things we did, but most of the time people are really interested to understand what was the result, and also how is that applicable to the job you're applying to. And if you then have a few of those examples at hand, you have something to pull out depending where the interview goes. This is a tool we used back in the days at Procter & Gamble, and I really hated it when I was there because it didn't align with how I saw the world or what I liked in the world. So it's basically a concept, and I call it the PI model, where P is for performance, I for image and exposure, and E for exposure. And, don't get, depend when you Google it, you get different percentages. But I think the overall message is the same. Often when we're accomplished professionals, we feel like I'm good at my job, I can do my job, so people should value and appreciate me for being good at the job. But that's not how the world works. Yes, that's the baseline. You have to be able to do your job. You have to know what you're doing. But that alone is not sufficient. You also need to have an image that goes with it, and you have to have the right exposure. And that is true in an organization, but it's also true for job hunting. And it looks slightly different. So within an organization, it could be having an opportunity to present to senior management, having an image of being, I don't know, the funny person or being reliable or, you know, whatever it might be. And yes, you don't want to be only the funny person, but, you know, like to have the mix of like people really know you for who you are. For job hunting, it could be applied in a different way. So image you can build on LinkedIn. I mean, these days, LinkedIn is just such a key tool for job hunting. And I think you already had, or you will have specific sessions on LinkedIn. And I think there's the basic bit, what you can do, and a slightly more advanced bit, but, you know, just as almost like your online business card, it's such an important tool. Exposure can look differently when you're looking for jobs, you know, so I have this whole conviction to find the jobs that, I mean, you probably, anyway, you need to get out quantities to, you know, to increase your chances, but then be really clear about the few jobs that you're really passionate about. And then work the space, you know, find somebody in the company, contact them on LinkedIn, maybe go to to a networking event in the sector or at the company, you know, really try to learn as much as possible about the organization or about the people there and get the exposure. Because sometimes it might be completely random how things happened. So just to give you another random example, when I was in 2013, I was wanting to go into the humanitarian field. And at that time, I also started getting curious about coaching. So I volunteered with a person working with a coach who worked on a positive psychology methodology. I helped her organize events. I was just learning, like being her right hand to learn from her. And at one of the networking events, I ran into a guy who was at HR at the Red Cross. And we just chit-chatted. I had nothing I wanted from him specifically. You know, it's just nice meeting people. And then a few weeks later, there was a job opening at the Red Cross and I applied. And I didn't hear back in a while. And, you know, just because I had the contact, I contacted him and I was like, yeah, just to let you know, I applied and I was just wondering, you know, if there is update on whatever happened to my application. He told me my application hadn't gone through in the system. There's no way I would have even known it hadn't come through if I hadn't met him and if he hadn't told me. And then he kind of helped me to basically apply for another position. He forwarded my position to the hiring manager. And in the end, I got the job. So I didn't get the job because of him. But if he hadn't told me that my application hadn't gone through, I wouldn't even have had the chance to interview and fight for the position. So for me, networking, and that links all to exposure, you know, to be exposed to the environment where you want to get into is sometimes random. You know, it's not always a clear line. I talk to this person and this person gives me my next job. Sometimes it happens unexpectedly, but the more you're exposed, the higher your chances that these moments can happen. And yes, this I can drop in the chat box as well, if that's of interest. This kind of little thing I developed on ChatGPT, but I actually have two I can share with you. This one I developed to play a little bit around with job hunting. I mean, all the prompts, I have some prompts for you on the next page. The prompts you can use either in this GPT or just in the generic ChatGPT. This one talks a little bit more like me. It has a bit more positive psychology in there, but both of them work. And I also have a tool that an amazing lady I'm following in Zurich shared with me. Let me just quickly find it. 1 second, which is another tool. It's developed for, yeah, I'll send it to you in a second. It's another tool that it's another GPT that's developed for founders, and it helps you to develop like your elevator pitch. So the tool itself might not be 100% fit, but the way it questions you and helps you to reflect, I think is anyway super valuable. So I'll dig the two of them out for you in a second. And just on the prompt, and I think you'll get the presentation. In any case, you'll get the recording. So I have a few prompts you can just plug into ChatGPT and play around with it. So one is on transferable skills. What you can do, you can ChatGPT cannot read your LinkedIn profile directly. But what you can do on LinkedIn, there is a way that you can download your profile as PDF. It's not the whole profile. I can show you where that is. Let me see. Just trying to figure out if yeah, here we go. LinkedIn. So there's a way when you go on LinkedIn resources, you can save to PDF. If you can see that up here, save to PDF. So you can save it as a PDF here. And now I can probably also find you the job hunting thing. Here we go. So I sent you this and the other one. Here, public. This one is the here you go. So these are the two GPTs I mentioned that you can play with, but these prompts you can also just put into the basic model. So this one, you download your profile, then you put in a CV, and then basically you ask them, so based on this, what are my transferable skills? And you see what it comes out with. I mean, for me, I treat ChatGPT like a junior assistant. You know, it's extremely willing, it's hardworking, and I always double check because often it's hallucinating and it's not going to tell you when it's hallucinating, you know, so it will just tell you and sound really smart, and maybe it's just making up stuff. But it can be a real good conversation starter or like a brainstorming starting point. Similarly, then as a next prompt, you can say, okay, based on this, draft a personal statement for me, either for LinkedIn or for a job pitch or for the elevator pitch, and just see what it comes up with. And then, of course, you can always tweak it or ask it to revise. Or here's another one. So given these transferable skills, what could be career directions to take that you might not have thought about already? You know, so maybe something new comes up that you hadn't considered. So yeah, that's basically it in terms of content. Here, a few book recommendation. I'm a bookworm, so I always suggest a few books that I found super helpful. The first one, Transitions. It's more in general about transition, but you're looking for a job, so I guess that's a type of transition. So this talks about how in transitions it's key to mark an ending, allow yourself time in what William Bridges calls the neutral zone, which often is a bit messy, and then move to new beginnings. Simon Sinek, some of you might have heard already. He's really known for also for Start with the Why. He did a TED talk on this. There's also a workbook that's called Find Your Why. Then the Startup of You, that's the book I mentioned before of the LinkedIn founders. And the Business Model You is the book that connects to this one-page framework. But honestly, I mean, I have the book, but I feel like if you have the framework, that's sufficient. You don't necessarily need the book. So that's it. But in terms of content, if there's anything, I don't know, if you have any questions or anything else that popped up, now is the time to jump in. No, so far so good. Well, tons of food for thought. So I hope some of this will inspire, it'll be practical, you know, help you in the journey. And this is a journey, you know, none of those sessions alone will solve the riddle, but, you know, little by little, I'm sure you'll get clearer where you're heading and opportunities start popping up. So voila. There's no more question or comment. We can close this out. And yeah, I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Best of luck in your reflections and in your job hunt. And I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you,
Thank you
very
very
much for
Thank
such
you
an
very
interesting
much.
session. Lots of insights, lots of things to think about.
My pleasure. And I'm sure, you know, probably one of the other Bevel ON event, I'm sure we'll run into each other, and that'll be a pleasure too.
I hope.
Have a nice
Take care. Have a nice afternoon.
Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you once again.
My pleasure. Bye.